I'm going to be discussing the solar eclipse in Aries occurring on Thursday the 20th of April at 5:13 a.m. British Summer Time. I'm going to be talking about some of the energies and themes that are present in this lunation, as well as the aspects and how to work with them. So do get yourself a nice hot drink, settle back, relax and enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So some of you may know that I've been creating new and full moon forecasts for Patreon, and I've been sharing some of this information on my Instagram, and I've also been creating new and full moon custom tarot spreads to go with each lunation, and I create a full written forecast for each lunation with the aspects, how to work with them, how they may be presenting within our lives, depending on which house the relevant sign occupies for you in your natal birth chart. My forecasts also go into shadow work that you can practice, as well as ritual and practice ideas and suggestions, and herbs and crystals that you can work with as well. And you also get a downloadable PDF of the tarot spread. So that is still available on my Patreon at the moment, and I've decided to start doing videos to go with these as well, because I really enjoy putting these forecasts together. I really hope that you enjoy. So let's just get right on in to discussing the solar eclipse in Aries. So let's talk about this solar eclipse in Aries occurring on Thursday the 20th of April 2023. This eclipse is a total eclipse, and then it does shift into a partial eclipse. And the solar eclipse in Aries is the second new moon in Aries of 2023, and it occurs on Thursday the 20th of April 2023 at 4:13 a.m. UTC, which is actually 5:13 a.m. British Summer Time, which is what we're currently in. So it's going to be 5:13 a.m. in England, and this is going to be occurring at 29 degrees and 50 minutes of Aries. So it is at that final anaretic degree of Aries. If you are in other parts of the world, the date and time will be different. So let's talk a little bit about themes and energies. This new moon solar eclipse in Aries, as I said, is the second new moon in Aries, and this eclipse is occurring at the final point of Aries at the critical anaretic degree, the 29th degree, which is an intense point of culmination. Another very intense point to note is that this lunation is also a powerful and transformative solar eclipse, which, as I said, is total and then shifts into a partial solar eclipse. Whilst the energy of the previous new moon at 0 degrees, 49 minutes of Aries, emphasised new beginnings and a jump start towards motivation and a momentum propelling us forward into movement and action. This Aries new moon solar eclipse is highlighting completions, forks in the road, reviewing, and a pivotal point of realisation and transformation. So as I discussed in my forecast for the previous lunation, the past month has seen some huge transformations astrologically. So Saturn is now at 4 degrees of Pisces. Mars is currently in its fall in Cancer at 13 degrees. And Pluto is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is also a very intense degree because it's the very early, emphasized and intense expression of the zodiacal sign of Aquarius. This Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius is also forming an out of sign square with the Sun and Moon at that critical final degree of Aries. So this is really interesting. The powerful square between Pluto and Jupiter is also continuing to build, and that will occur in May. So much has changed, and we may be feeling that certain areas of our lives are entering into new eras, especially with the Sun due to ingress into Taurus just 4 hours following this solar eclipse. Again, this emphasizes the significance of the intense eclipse within our lives. The energy that I get from this eclipse is almost that of a deal breaker, an overload, or an overwhelm of exhaustion, a pivotal point of transformation or change, a make or break, perhaps a moment when it's tempting to quit, fall off the wagon, or experience a change of heart, or pull back on a project you've been working towards. I almost feel this kind of dithering a little bit, dithering energy. And I say this for a number of reasons, which I will expand upon as we dive into the aspects, but also it's an understandable response to the big energy of the previous Aries New Moon, which was so powerful with that momentum and the powerful impetus propelling us forward into action and motion. And there is a lot less energy and drive with this solar eclipse. It's more static, confusing, overwhelming, and there's this fuzziness, as I said, sort of fogginess, ditheriness. So if the previous Aries New Moon had a boot camp vibe, this is like the unexpected flu that wipes you out for a week, or a wave of exhaustion as your body adjusts to the work it's doing. And it's partly to do with checking in with ourselves about how we're doing. Are we nurturing and fueling our bodies efficiently and with good quality sustenance? And again, that is the Taurus themes coming up there as we prepare to move forward into Taurus season. Are we working towards harmonizing that synergistic balance of dynamic energies which ebb and flow in our lives? So we know that we can balance the hard work with plenty of rest, time with our loved ones, and fun. That dynamic balance, that ebb and flow balance, the balance that is ever moving and changing, but that is a kind of continual dance, is really, really important. And we've been feeling that since the Libra Full Moon. So it's my feeling that if you haven't been working towards getting a balance during the past month, especially with the Libra Full Moon that we've experienced a few weeks ago, then this Aries eclipse may knock you sideways just a little bit. So whilst the first Aries New Moon felt like a leveling up, that's what I talked about in my previous forecast, this Aries eclipse feels much more like a review and a check-in. To use the fitness metaphor again, this would be weighing in, so to speak. So we've had a full month in Aries, and you may have an idea of how your body responds to daily stresses at different points in your cycle. This may be especially true for you if you are a menstruating person or someone who has menstruated at a point in your life. So that's just an example of how this might manifest though. But this is a review time. And if you've been mindful over the past month, you may have been able to gather some information about which part of the month you're likely to feel more tired, for instance, and need more rest than usual. And this works for other aspects that you might be considering, such as writing a book, a work project, home improvements, a course you're taking, mental health journey, habit tracking, etc. So it's about looking at the data that you have collected, that you've been mindful about, how you're experiencing things in your body and how you're affected by your daily life and whatever it is that you are undertaking. However much of it you may have collected or noticed, and you can look at that data about how you've performed and felt and consider what can be tweaked, shifted, or redirected to yield further improved results. So let's say we began a new project at the Aries New Moon, and now we've reached a point where we feel stuck, like creatively blocked, exhausted, indecisive, overwhelmed, busy with other responsibilities, dissatisfied, etc. It might be really tempting to give up, but perhaps rather what may help is to witness where we're at, to sit with that and to see it, and rest if we need to. And when we feel strong enough to, we can examine why this may be. So shadow work the inner workings of the blockage and extract the wisdom within. So you might feel like there's a simple solution to this. It might be taking a week away as a break from the project, a day off, an early night, a walk, a weekend with friends, a date night, reading a novel, a shift in perspective, seeking guidance and other people's opinions, thinking outside of the box. This work can support you to understand how you work as a person and how you can start to notice patterns, and which, if you work through them by asking the questions, you can mine that data for the wisdom to find your personalized solution to your block or problem. This also may not come in the form of a block, but just an opportunity to review where you've come from, so how the process has been and what can be improved upon or tested out next. And this also forms part of the data collecting as we work. So if you started a new job, perhaps you might have a 1 month review with a line manager at this time to see how you're settling in and how you feel about your workload, etc. But it's also likely that the eclipse element of this lunation may be tumultuous for some, though I don't like to think of it in a dramatic way and suggest that it might be painful or challenging, although it may cause some shifts and changes that will feel unexpected, life-changing or pivotal. It's not to be feared though, because I also feel that eclipses carry the energy of the Tower card in the tarot, and the eclipse is only going to uproot or tear down what is already unstable or not based on solid and healthy foundations. So there are myriad ways that this energy may be showing up in your life, depending upon this area that the Aries eclipse is occurring for you in your natal chart. The energy may feel challenging, heavy, and overwhelming, but I don't feel that it is overly negative. It's more like a strong gust of wind. It's blowing out the cobwebs and really clearing the energy ahead of Taurus season. So if you haven't already had a good spring clean, you may feel that now is the right time. And if you feel cluttered, overwhelmed, fuzzy, or brain foggy, I think that rest, meditation, switching off from external noise such as social media will be really helpful for this new moon solar eclipse. So the questions I posed at the previous Aries New Moon remain very relevant, especially if there were some of those metaphorical cobwebs that you didn't get to clearing out at that time, or that perhaps were just taking some time to shift and evolve. As a reminder, those questions were: what do I want to continue and take forward? What do I need to prioritize, reorder, or release in order to make space for the new? Where might I need to schedule in some time for restful, creative liminality to nourish myself through the process? So let's talk a little bit about eclipses. You may know intuitively which area or areas that you feel called to work with during this lunation, and what may still need to be released or reviewed or refreshed in order to move forward. Many practitioners do state that it's not a good idea to practice magic during the eclipse. I feel that personally I do tend to avoid manifestation style spells and rituals, and I prefer to focus more on self-care rituals and practices, divination and shadow work during this time. Eclipses force change, whether or not we welcome it. So it's prudent to be as honest and upfront with yourself as you can, which is why I make the argument for continuing the shadow work and inner work throughout the eclipse portal, if you feel safe to do so, of course, so that this can help you to understand more of what is coming up for you. I would, however, agree that it's prudent to avoid practicing other forms of magic during the eclipses. And there is also a superstition which warns against viewing the eclipse. I really wouldn't worry overly too much about this. I just wouldn't go out of my way to bathe in the moon. Eclipses occur when the sun, moon, and earth align with the lunar nodes. So the lunar nodes, the north node and the south node, are fixed points that mark where the moon's orbital path crosses the ecliptic. In astronomy, the ecliptic is a circular path that we see the sun make as it passes through the constellations during the course of a year, as the Earth orbits the sun. Solar eclipses occur at new moons, when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, which partially or completely obscures the face of the moon from our perspective. So those who are able to see a total solar eclipse see the outer atmosphere of the sun, the corona, which stretches across thousands of kilometers beyond the surface of the sun. For your information as well, lunar eclipses occur at full moons, when the moon passes through the shadow of the Earth, which is formed by the Earth's light. To our perspective, this casts a shadow across the face of the moon, which appears to have an amber or caramel hue. Eclipse portals are really intense points of turbulence, as I've mentioned. They are points of ending and release, and a catalyst for change, the ultimate unravelling and destruction of what we have previously known to be true. An eclipse is like a central vortex point, or an eye of the storm in a sense, where the building energies culminate and transformation is inevitable, although the results of these shifts may only be seen months after the event. The solar eclipse in Aries is a total eclipse, as I said, and then it does shift into a partial eclipse. Partial eclipses are not as intense as total eclipses. However, the energy is still destabilizing and destructive in nature, and the results often manifest in a very real and visible way in our lives. In ancient Hellenistic astrology, eclipses were thought to signify the death of a king and have been associated with fear and superstition as a result. Eclipses are much like the Tower card, as I mentioned in the tarot, and they will destroy whatever has insufficient foundations. Eclipses aren't to be feared, rather to be approached with an awareness of the seasonal themes, as well as an awareness of one's own personal struggles and challenges, plus an attitude of transparency, faith, and curiosity. If you're not sure which areas of your life you feel intuitively guided to consider with these prompts, then check your natal birth chart in whole sign astrology to see which house Aries occupies for you. This is where the solar eclipse is occurring. And for clarity, you can also look at which houses Aquarius, Pisces, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer occupy, as these signify the areas of your life implicated with the planetary movements and aspects. Also check if you have any significant planets or points in the other cardinal signs, Libra, Cancer and Capricorn, in your natal chart within a few degrees of this eclipse, as these may be opposing if they are in Libra or squaring if they are in Cancer or in Capricorn. To check this, generate your natal chart using whole sign astrology with free software at astroseek.com or astro.com. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It is the cardinal, assertive, or active fire sign. It's masculine by duality, but that does not refer to the sex. It's symbolized by the ram, and its ruler is Mars, the god of war. So Aries is characterized as confident, energetic, willful, assertive, ambitious, headstrong, independent, empowered, fearless, youthful, and a great leader. The shadow traits include impulsiveness, anger, insensitivity, arrogance, and a domineering or autocratic attitude. And the Aries superpower is their self-awareness and the understanding of their own needs and triggers, and an ability to advocate for themselves and ensure their own survival and comfort needs are met. Aries is primarily concerned with the self, survival, will, energy, and an activation of passion and power. A healthy expression of Aries is not selfish but self-aware of their own needs, and by extension ensures allowances for space, time, etc. for rebalancing, self-soothing, calming, relaxation, rest, so that their goals are met in the most effective and efficient way and via the fastest possible route. Let's talk a little bit about some shadow work that we can consider at this time. As with the Aries New Moon, the shadow work is consistently in line with the work that was engaged with during that time. And it might be a continuation of that work. It feels very much like it's a journey, or it could be a redo. Either way, this eclipse forces us to check in and to review, as I mentioned. And with Mercury in shadow, preparing to go retrograde the day after, on the 21st of April, planetary signs point to a time of reflection and a small pause to review our efforts thus far. It may be for some folks that they felt they never really got their plans off the ground for their goals and manifestations. And so if this applies, I suggest that the work is investigating to understand why that may be. So what blocks are in the way and what needs to be actioned or changed or shifted or removed to enable these blocks to be lifted. So for the previous new moon, I talked about energy and the Duracell bunny. By its nature, Aries is a cardinal fire sign, and so it's great for a first fiery push, but it doesn't have the endurance to follow through always to the end, and that's why allowing for the time to process in between the working time is really important. So that rest again that we're talking about, and rest is really, really essential for the Taurus archetype. It's much slower energy, more grounded and earthy, of course. So now that we find ourselves in the final degrees of the Aries energy, which is a strong expression of the developed Aries archetype, and within reviewing where we're at, we may come to realize that part of our initial plans don't quite fit or work, and the plan just needs to be tweaked or adjusted before we continue forward with our plans and into the slower, more stable, fixed earth energy of Taurus season. So perhaps we can refine the questions we asked ourselves at the previous new moon in Aries, and you can click over and watch that video if you would like. It's on the channel, and we can ask ourselves the following questions. So obviously take a pen and your journal or your book of shadows and note down your responses to the prompts. I would just say as well, if you put the transcript on and the captions, you'll be able to take a screenshot of the prompts as well. I might also take these prompts and put them in the description box for you as well. Do I still feel that what I've been called to invest time, energy, and resources into so far is resonant and aligned with my goals, ethics, and worldview, etc.? Do I feel more of a harmonious dynamic balance between the varied areas of my life since the Libra full moon? Are there any areas of my life which still feel out of balance or unhealthy? What questions do I need to ask myself about this area of my life in order to understand where the imbalance is and how to remedy it? What does this area of my life, insert whatever it is, project, relationship, etc., what does this make me feel about myself? What responses do I immediately notice? So you can close your eyes for this if you like. Note if you have a physical, emotional, or mental reaction or repulsion. What images arise, sounds, smells, memories, thoughts, emotions, aversions, fears, anxieties, projections. Notice everything that comes up and note it all down. What are the actions I need to take or refrain from engaging with in order to make these required changes? How can I prepare myself to move forward with my plans in the healthiest, highest expression of myself? In asking these questions, we can probe and understand more of our inner workings and why we may be experiencing whatever is coming up for us. This can support to discover ways in which we can work around, dissect, and either dissolve and disempower the challenges we're presented with so that we can move forward with confidence. Aries rules the head, face, and brain and the blood, our life force energy. So this does concern our health, and we can ask ourselves again about caring for our health and our vitality and our life force, and how the quality of what we're putting into that is really important. With Mercury preparing to go into retrograde, it is an ideal time to journal and reflect, and you may wish to look back at the shadow work I suggested at the previous Aries New Moon, of course, as I mentioned. Within the full forecast that I have included on Patreon, I go into how you can sort of rework some of that again. As I say, I really feel like this is like a continuation of that beginning Aries story, because it really is. It's like the end of a chapter. So there's more shadow work in that forecast if you want to access that. That's on Patreon. Let's just talk about some of the aspects at play. So the sun and moon are conjunct, of course, at 29 degrees, 50 minutes of Aries, as well as conjunct the North Node, which is out of sign at 4 degrees of Taurus. So as discussed, eclipses occur when the sun and moon align with lunar nodes. So this eclipse is slightly different as the energy of the North Node is expressing in Taurus, whereas the sun and moon remain in Aries. So this also points to the intensity and perhaps discordance or complexity of the energies of this solar eclipse. It feels somewhat conflicting somehow. It's as if the sun and moon have one final opportunity to make a push for it in Aries, but with the eclipse ruler Mars in its falling Cancer at 13 degrees 7 minutes, it's possible that this final burst of energy may misfire or backfire, and the North Node is in a slower, more grounded and stable fixed earth sign of Taurus, and so there's a maturity that we're urged to move towards with this. The ways in which the ego gets triggered is absolutely coming to mind here, and how the ego expresses itself through a person. So if it resonates for you, perhaps this is a time to adopt a more humbling attitude. If someone is rude to you in traffic or in person, or if you've been engaging in petty squabbles or even larger disagreements, just consider taking a beat to ask yourself if it's really worth your time. Mars in Cancer is a great defender, but it also knows when to stay still or hidden or silent, just to win a battle. But beyond the concept of winning, it's that egoic thing again. Beyond that, perhaps attempting to just start to release some of the ways in which the ego gets defensive or takes certain situations or conversations or statements or circumstances personally is perhaps something to consider. I don't buy into, destroying the ego. The ego is part of us, but the ego wants to keep us safe, right? But the ego will also hold us back. So it's about being aware of those egoic traits of ours and how our ego is expressing, and maybe just like putting some mindfulness practices in place just to sort of like quieten that down, just to soften the edges. Perhaps you can just let go of it if you can reason that objectively it doesn't really matter and it's not really of value for you to worry about. And this isn't to suggest that you let someone walk all over you, but rather, is it really worth your energy to care about it? This softer, more forgiving, allowing attitude starts to move from a juvenile, selfish expression of the Aries archetype closer towards the more mature, content and intentional energy of the fixed earth sign Taurus. And that's not to say that Aries is always that way, but it's just a certain expression of the archetype, because of course Taurus can be extremely stubborn and fixed, closed-minded, etc. So just to make that point, that there are of course shadow traits and superpowers for all of the zodiacal signs. So Taurus is much more focused on what is truly of value and of worth to themselves and their loved ones, rather than concerning themselves with pettiness or unnecessary negativity. And it's just an interesting energetic to observe during the eclipse, especially because we're really close to that ingress into Taurus from the sun, and also that, we're having 2 episodes in the Aries story, as it were. It feels quite relevant. So as we've experienced the recent planetary shifts and the eclipse now readies us for the sun's ingress into Taurus, the moon is asking us to consider how we personally are shifting also. How are the areas of your life which you're considering during your shadow work evolving? Do you feel that parts of you are personally shifting as well and changing? How do you feel that you've developed as a person within the past quarter? And what have you been healing from? Have any of your experiences shifted your perceptions, core beliefs, worldviews, paradigms, self-worth, etc.? what is your perception of yourself now, and how does it compare to your perception of yourself previously? I think those are really interesting questions and prompts to ask. So it leads on from the shadow work. So the sun and moon in Aries are also conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter is beneath the beams at 23 degrees, 40 minutes of Aries. And there is, of course, ongoing debate surrounding whether or not the eclipse overpowers Jupiter's benefic nature, or if Jupiter provides support for whatever comes up during the eclipse. And I'm personally of the mind that both may be true simultaneously, and that it may be a case where, for instance, the impact of an incident, which might be a lot worse if Jupiter wasn't conjunct the eclipse, might be lessened as a result. But similarly, it's also likely that Jupiter is debilitated within 6 degrees beneath the beams of the sun, and therefore its benefic influence may also be dimmed somewhat. So my thoughts are not to worry over this, but rather to just focus on the qualities of the moment that you can enjoy and embrace that Jupiterian energy, whether that's cozy night in, a cup of hot chocolate, a bowl of ice cream, a great movie, or laughing with a friend. And small little moments of gratitude are known to shift the mood and support the emotional and mental well-being. And it's not to say that we emotionally or spiritually bypass what isn't so fabulous, because of course we also do the shadow work, we do the inner work, the healing work, the embodiment, the energy practices. I would also just advocate that you keep yourself as safe as possible during this lunation and don't take any unnecessary risks. Jupiter beneath the beams in Aries may also signify some misplaced overconfidence or arrogance, so watch out for that, either for yourself or for those around you. It may also signify that you missed out on an opportunity, or something that you hoped for is almost but not quite within reach, which is frustrating, or you might have delayed blessings as well. Although when Jupiter is Cazimi on the 11th of April, you may notice numerous small and large blessings arise. So this day will be a great time to perform magic for luck, growth, good fortune, joy, love, prosperity, and abundance. So 11th of April is a good day. The sun and moon at 29 degrees of Aries is also forming a square to Pluto in Aquarius, as I mentioned, and that's also a powerful, intense degree point of 0 degrees, 19 minutes of Aquarius. And there is so much in the collective that we will see shift over a period of time with this Pluto ingress into Aquarius. But for this lunation and the purposes of this forecast, I'm concerned with the personal impact. Just be sure that you understand which house in your natal chart Aquarius occupies, and check to see if there are any planets or points in your Aquarius house or any of the other fixed houses, Leo, Taurus, or Scorpio. And of course, do note that this square is also out of sign, as a typical square from Aries would be to Capricorn. But in this case, Pluto is at the beginning degrees of Aquarius, forming this square to the sun and moon. So this is a powerful and potent force of change and a push towards independence, self-sustainability, sovereignty, the importance of collective movements, and how powerful joined forces can be in the world as a catalyst for change. We are being asked to consider how our actions directly impact upon the planet and the people, and we're being called to truly empower ourselves with knowledge and wisdom from trusted sources and teachers, with genuine endeavours, collaborative projects, and community plans we can support with. So avoid any of those huge media outlets or fako schmako, money-grabbing, power-hungry schemers, entrepreneurs, or spiritual gurus. The fako schmako, I just want to shout out, is a friend of mine and work colleague who calls out these self-proclaimed gurus as fako schmakos, and I think it's brilliant. We are called to take initiative and to be fully mindful, present, and responsible for ourselves and our actions within the world at this time. So perhaps you might be one of those folks to initiate change for the better within the collective, but you've been holding back by numbing your pain, you've been fighting your intuition, you've been fearful to take a plunge or doubtful about your ideas. But now is the time that you're called into action, and this aspect may feel uncomfortable, especially if it's occurring in an area of your natal chart connected to relationships or friendships, because it may completely expose the connection to be one that is no longer supportive or healthy for you, or perhaps for both parties, And you may find yourself called out by another person and realize that your actions haven't been so great or aligned with your ethics and morals either. Honesty with yourself is absolutely the very best option to take ownership and responsibility, and to allow yourself to learn the lessons and refine your attitudes and behaviors to be more in line with the person you truly desire and are meant to be. It's not about self-pity or punishment either, just understanding and committing to doing better. As I mentioned, with all the aspects, look to see where they take place in your natal chart to understand which areas of your life are implicated by this lunation. So there are a number of further significant aspects that I would love to go into here, but just to run over them really, really quickly. Mars is in its fall in Cancer at 13 degrees 7 minutes, and this may feel a bit irritating and may feel kind of defensive. It's squaring Chiron in Aries at 16 degrees. Again, we might feel old wounds resurfacing. Chiron has been a really important part of this Aries story, so just bear that in mind. And areas of your life that you may feel that transformative, electrifying kind of impact from this eclipse. You might be aware of the pattern or problem or behavior, and you can start to sort of shift your feelings about it and reframe it and retell the story. So shadow work again. And I also feel that EFT tapping will be hugely supportive for you. It was one of the most amazing things to support me with a period of depression and anxiety. So just be mindful as well that you may be more sensitive and reactionary. Hold yourself with tenderness, just be really tender with yourself and compassionate, and that will support you no end with this. So Mars in Cancer is also sextile the North Node in Taurus at 4 degrees. And this will be hugely comforting and heart aligning for so many individuals if you lean into it. So absolutely lean into the self-care, self-love practices. Mercury in Taurus at the intense midpoint, 15 degrees, 33 minutes, closely conjunct Uranus at 17 degrees, 48 minutes. Mercury is due to station retrograde on the 21st, so there's that energy of clearing up, confirming anything that's foggy, and just redoing, reviewing. So in Taurus, the themes that are relevant are that of comfort and value. So really what makes life worth living. And, so it's about refining down the details, removing any stagnant energies, anything that doesn't serve. And I'm feeling Marie Kondo vibes for sure. So it's decluttering energy. So Mercury in Taurus is also sextile Mars in Cancer within 2 degrees. So it's even closer than the North Node sextile. And Uranus in Taurus at 17 degrees is also, of course, sextile Mars in Cancer. So again, this is just fueling that need to refine, distill, and get clear. It's also interesting to note that Venus is in mutual reception with Mercury in Gemini at 10 degrees and 23 minutes. So Venus is absolutely on board with this decluttering. And Venus in Gemini is also square to Saturn in Pisces at 4 degrees. So there's a feeling that there are some blocks or challenges or obstacles in the love story, fear of commitment, codependency. So examine this if it resonates for you. Look at the love houses, relationship houses, the 5th, 7th and 8th houses in your chart, and perhaps the money houses as well, because Venus rules over money and finances. So 2nd house is 8th as well. Saturn in Pisces is also sextile to the Sun and Moon in Aries, and exactly sextile to the North Node in Taurus. So again, this support indicates that when we take ownership and responsibility for our stuff and to get rid of what no longer works, declutter that pile of clothes, for instance, that will support us in our path towards evolution, because we know that support is there and closer to our highest soul's purpose. It's basically a celestial thumbs up is what I feel. And also interesting to note is that Black Moon Lilith at 11 minutes 23 seconds of fiery Leo is trine to that Chiron in Aries and sextile Venus in Gemini as well. And so this is more empowerment when it comes to reproductive rights, gender equality, and humanitarian causes. So I feel like that Venus is really a big part of this story. And, we talked about Black Moon Lilith before in a previous forecast, but essentially we're just really, really feeling the dark, divine, primordial mother kind of rising up, fighting against the dominant, misogynistic, restrictive forces of the patriarchy. I think this is an ongoing story for so many people. It's reflected in our personal lives as well as within the collective. And so, this may be bringing up again some of those old traumas, and Chiron, as I said, is a really, really important part of this Aries story. So do just hold yourself with tenderness and compassion. Approach any work you do around this time, whether it's some of the prompts I've listed here or in the previous Aries New Moon video or any of your own shadow work. Just approach with caution, engage mindfully. It will be challenging, and just give yourself unconditional love and witness what comes up with neutrality and compassion for yourself. Just hold yourself. It may be intense, but that's okay. Just rest if you need to. Such a lot of the time I find that I just need to rest during these really intense lunations. And if that's the right thing for you to do, then absolutely lean into that. Okay. So thank you so much for joining me. I just want to send you so many blessings. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Leave me a little moon emoji, and I'm just sending you so many blessings for this eclipse. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, truly hope that this has served you. Please remember to click over to Patreon, and there you can access the full forecast. You can read much more in detail and depth about the aspects at play here within this lunation, and I'm also providing some beautiful rituals and practices, some suggestions for you to engage in that will be really supportive for you at this time, and some more insights around what might be helpful for you at this time depending on what you're going through. I am also suggesting some beautiful herbs and crystals that you might wish to work with during this time, and what these things can aid you with as you do your work with this moon. So I really hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that this video has been enlightening and supportive for you and your journey. And if you enjoyed it, please do click the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed. And also click that little notification bell to receive notifications when I create videos just like this and other witchcraft and tarot content. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I also have a Patreon where you can access the full written forecasts for the new and full moon. These forecasts also include further practices and suggestions for rituals and shadow work, as well as herbs and crystals that you can use in your practice for this lunation. I also include the tarot spread for the particular lunation, and that is bespoke to the moment. So on Patreon you can download a PDF of that, and the graphic is also available on my Instagram. If you wanted to look at the spread prompts there, you can do that. So do click over to Patreon and join us there if you would like more content like this. I also create some custom Book of Shadows pages with rituals and recipes that I've included on the channel, so those are occasional as well. So do come over to support the Patreon. I'd love to see you there. There's also a Discord server which is really lovely as well. And follow me over on Instagram as well, where I share quite frequently what I'm up to, what I'm reading, what I'm working on, etc. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this video and it serves you. If you made it to the end of the video, please leave me a little moon emoji. Do take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you in another video really soon. Many blessings. Bye.